All right. So we're here in Nat Bailey Stadium. First ever media experience for the Blue Jays Avenue podcast. And we're excited. This is awesome. And Chris, finally to meet you in person. This is awesome, man. And I'm just thrilled to hear. And appreciate you letting us in our inaugural media experience. So talk about the season, what's going on so far, and the way the season's gone.
Yeah, first of all, Rocky, welcome in. I'm glad you can get your face on camera here. It's been mostly audio, obviously, to start off. You're starting to get some video exposure here, and you're here at this beautiful stadium. So happy to have you here for sure. And season's been a bit on the losing side for the Canadians this year. I'd say more losses than wins. We find ourselves in last place in the Northwest League, but there's certainly been some individual performances that have been good, and filling up this ballpark, especially in recent homestands. So there's been more good than bad, of course, other than the stuff that's on the field.
So we look at the pitching forefront, and there's a lot of excitement with the pitching. I mean, Johnny King, considered one of the top pitching prospects after Trey Savage. Then out of nowhere, Nolan Perry recently got promoted and is dominated. And we saw a bit of Daniel Guerra yesterday. I know he struggled a bit, but he's still a promising pitcher. And Danny Thompson, another guy. Talk a bit about that rotation and where it stands right now.
Yeah, the rotation is absolutely electric, and not to mention Austin Cates, who was here to start the year and then ended up getting the bump up to Double-A. So he was absolutely fantastic before going up. At one point, the Canadians starting rotation had the best ERA in minor league baseball. I don't think we're quite there right now, but still excellent. And you mentioned some of those guys. Nolan Perry has given up just 2 earned runs in 4 starts as a Canadian. Going back to last week, he won Northwest League Pitcher of the Week. 5 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 10 Ks against those Spokane Indians. So well-deserved there. And then came out here and did more of the same. He pitched his longest outing as a Canadian, 6 scoreless innings in the first game of this series on Tuesday night and got the win. So everything's coming up Nolan Perry so far. And I really think this guy's going to be a guy that has a lot of kind of helium going forward. He's ranked as the 17th ranked prospect per MLB Pipeline right this second. But I really think this is going to be a top 10 prospect guy when they kind of do one of those re-ranks at some point. And talking about some of those other guys, Johnny King has excellent numbers, especially considering his age at 19. Had a bit of a rough start on Sunday afternoon, so the ERA is in the kind of mid-2s right now, but that speaks to how great of a season he's really had. That despite that outing where he only recorded 1 out and gave up 5 runs, he still has a sub-3 ERA. He came into that outing sub-1, so really good stuff for Johnny, and looking forward to seeing him kind of get back, get things right this week in his start. So that'll be something to look forward to. And Daniel Guerra, finally, that you mentioned, he's the kind of guy, just a lot of pitchability. He'll put guys on occasionally, but he just finds ways at a jam. So I think that's a really important trait for any pitcher to have, because you're going to obviously have those struggles as you go up, and really at any level of the minor leagues, you're going to run into those struggles. So being able to pitch out of tough jams is obviously a huge asset to have.
Who does Johnny King remind you of? Because we talked about Trey Savage last year when you came in our podcast and talked about ace material, and some people think that he has ace potential. Who does he remind you of?
It's a lofty comparison. I know he's got this for sure with the curveball, but ever since he's been in high school, it's been Clayton Kershaw. That curveball, it's a plus curveball. If the fastball in the low to mid 90s maybe gets a tick up from there, and then the third pitch comes along, the changeup, and the pitchability that we're talking about with Guerra, if all that kind of continues for Johnny, he's got the chance to do pretty much anything, right? His ceiling is limitless. I think he's got a chance to be a big league starter and a big league ace type of guy.
We talk about 2 outfielders that stand out to me. Alexis Hernandez, breakout season, been hitting for power. And Carter Cunningham, another guy who was drafted a couple years ago in that same class as Johnny King, the Cal Steffens, the Trey Savage. Talk about those 2 and what stands out for them and what's been working for them all season.
Yeah, Alexi Hernandez, first of all, just an absolute gamer, kind of guy you can just pencil into the lineup every day, and that's what Jose Mayorga, the manager for the Canadians, has been doing, and just unbelievable. He's coming off Player of the Week, so the Canadians actually swept the Player of the Weeks last week for their series in Spokane. Player of the Week was Alexi Hernandez. I don't remember a player that was as scorching hot in my tenure with the Canadians over the last 3 seasons, but 12 hits, 8 of which were extra base knocks for Alexi, 3 bombs and 5 doubles, and he added 3 walks as well. So absolutely scorching hot. Continued it so far this week. He had a bomb in the first game of this series and more hits to come after that. So really good stuff for Alexi. And I think at 23 years old, he's really showing that he's kind of mastered the league a little bit, or starting to at least, and that could be a guy that you could watch for a potential call-up. And same can be said with Carter Cunningham. He's been doing it from the jump this year. He has I believe, the highest, if not top 3 highest on-base percentage plus slugging in the Northwest League, well over 900. Had a bit of a tough week last week, but he's got kind of right this week with a couple of home runs and really good stuff for CC. He's a fan favorite here. You'll see it here in your first trip to the Nat, Rocky, but he's going to be probably more than anyone have the loudest cheers from the Nat Bailey faithful here. He's just beloved around here. The ushers know him. The staff all around here. He'll help out with pulling the tarp occasionally when it's raining or raking like he did last year. He's just a character that's loved by everyone.
So when you look at this team, who would you say is the most underrated player so far for the Canadians?
Underrated. That's a tough one. I would say, if I were to give you a name, underrated, maybe Maddox Latta. I think Maddox Latta might be a guy that has some big value for the Blue Jays kind of going forward. Good defensive player, kind of does everything well. Maybe doesn't have that really standout tool, but can kind of do everything, right? He's got some speed. He's got good defense at shortstop, some contact, a little bit of power as well. So that would probably be my guy, Maddox Latta.
So when you look at the pitching matchups and looking at the divisions, and where would you stand with the Canadians pitching compared to the rest of the division?
You know what? I'd probably put it up there. It's got to be up there with anyone, pretty much. You know, Eugene is probably the class, not even probably, definitely the class of the Northwest League in the first half. They've got a double-digit lead over second place. So they've all but wrapped up the first half, and I think pretty much all the other 5 teams, including the Canadians, are looking forward to the second half and, you know, just trying to get hot, get the right guys up single A, and hopefully we can get something going in the second half and meet Eugene in the Northwest League Championship, because it seems like it's been wrapped up for several weeks now.
Talk about some of the guys who just got promoted. They're like Kalina Sauer just recently got promoted. Austin Morozes, we had him on a few episodes ago. Man, such a humble guy. And Connor Larkin, another guy that's been very underrated. I believe he's in Double A right now, and some people think that he could be a guy that could be sought after as a reliever in the future. Like, talk about those guys and where they stand, and do you think that there's a possibility they could be up in the majors in the future?
Yeah, it's possible for sure. Kalina Sauer spent the first, 10, 15 games here. He was part of that kind of closer by committee for Jose Mayorga, and he was definitely the most lights-out reliever on this team. So well-deserved promotion. Hawaiian kid from San Diego State. So really good stuff. Good frame as well. I could see that guy being a guy that rises quickly through the system. Austin Morozes was only here for really a cup of coffee. He did spend some time here last year before, just the 1 or 2 games here to start the year, and then he was right up to Double A. So that's another guy, indie ball guy, 6'8". So
yeah, he's a big dude.
Huge frame on the mound. Good guy too, like you mentioned, and just that's a guy that's going to go right after hitters. And the final guy that you mentioned was Connor Larkin, 2024 Vancouver Canadian. He just got the call to AAA, actually. So he's been in AA for a while, all of last year, I believe, and the beginning of this year. But he's now up in Buffalo, so that's a guy we've obviously been rooting for, like we do all our former Vancouver Canadians, of course. But, you see these guys go up, and you're rooting for them when you see them in New Hampshire and Buffalo, and you're just kind of hoping they get a shot. And whenever they do, it's awesome for us.
There's a specific prospect in the system who just recently got promoted to New Hampshire. That's Arjun Namala. And with Namala, were you surprised that he started the season off of high A, and now that he's promoted to Double A? If you look at the way he played much better before he got promoted. Like, talk a bit about the reasoning why he started in high A and what improved for him throughout the stretch.
Yeah, I think just considering his age and the fact that he ended last season in a bit of a funk. The first half went really well for him last year. Second half, not so much. I think this time last year, people were talking about getting up to Double A, right, for him. So that didn't really happen, and he really kind of went a bit cold towards the end of the season. And I think just the way that season ended, and you look into spring training, there were some solid signs for sure, but also some struggles, right, as to be expected. And I think it made sense that he kind of came back here, allowed him to get hot before moving him up to Double A and presenting that next challenge. But all things are good with Arjun right now. It looks like he's hitting the ball pretty well in Double A, and that's another guy we're obviously rooting for going forward. But that guy's been a big part of our team over the last season and a half, season plus, and wishing him all the best, obviously, on his march up to Toronto.
Right. Let's talk about Edward Duran and Sam Shaw. They just got recently activated, and I think they're in rehab assignments right now. And Sam Shaw, Canadian kid, of course, right? So he's been talked about a lot in Canadian baseball. And Edward Duran is probably the top catcher prospect in the Jays system. And when you look at those two, like, what are their ceilings and what are the potentials are?
Yeah, it seems like both of those guys could be major leaguers one day. Edward Duran just got activated back here in Vancouver, so we saw him yesterday in last night's game, and we'll expect to see him get the lion's share of starts behind the plate. Kind of going forward, I'd say you've got Jacob Sharp and Hayden Gilliland as well. For a while, we just had the two catchers, Sharp and Gilliland, kind of going back to back. Getting a third guy in there is big, so we'll see how that's kind of divided amongst those three guys. But I'd imagine, like you mentioned, Duran being one of the top prospects in the system as far as catching goes, that he will be the guy that kind of gets most of the starts whenever he can, and that's going to be a good guy to watch kind of going forward. As for Sam Shaw, looking forward to get him back in Vancouver, obviously kind of rehabbing and getting acclimated again before he gets back up here. But you said it, Canadian kid from Victoria, having the chance to play here. He played a handful of games here last year before ending his season with an injury there. So we're really looking forward to getting him back there. And easy guy to market, right, as a hometown kid.
Of course. We talk about the Iowa meat truck, Payne Williams. He was in Double A last year, struggled a bit. Now he's with Vancouver once again. And he looks like he's trying to find his form and trying to succeed. And so far he's doing pretty decently. Like what does he need to do to take the next step? Because we know that there's a lot of holes in his swing, right? But, he hits for power. His defense has been decent. Like, talk a bit about him and what's next for him.
It's funny you say that because that's kind of been the MO, right? That he hits for power. But oddly enough, this year he has no home runs. But the on-base has been astronomical, right? Over 400 on-base percentage and really getting on at a huge clip, and maybe the least prototypical leadoff hitter that you could ever expect, right? At 6'5", 260 plus. But he's been leading off a lot of the time for the Canadians this season, in recent weeks especially. So I'm not exactly sure what he needs to do. I probably would have expected him to be up in Double A by now. I think it's probably just a logjam of certain guys. Sean Keys, who was here last year, he's up there playing some first base. Jackson Hornung as well. So you just have certain guys in Double A that are preventing maybe guys like Peyton Williams and Carter Cunningham, guys that can be first basemen. That's maybe kind of preventing some of those promotions, I think, more than maybe the play on the field might be.
So who would you say has been talked about that you think that has the potential to improve and be better? Because there's so much potential with this team, right? We could talk about in all levels in the Jays organization. They've done an incredible job of building the system overall. But if there's a name out there that doesn't get talked about, who would it be?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. I'd say Hayden Gilliland, the aforementioned, one of the catchers. I think that's a guy who kind of comes in, day out. He's got a better stick than people realize, and the pop time. Behind the plate, he maybe doesn't have as strong of an arm as, Jacob Sharp or Edward Duran behind the plate, but he seems to just get the ball out early all the time and kind of get it over to second base. So he has kind of better thrown out base stealer kind of numbers than you'd expect. Jacob Sharp, I'd throw in there with him. Both of those catchers, a bit underrated. Jacob Sharp currently has the highest caught stealing percentage of any Vancouver Canadians catcher in team history, if it were to end as of right today. Of course, we have a long way to go, but both of those guys I like a lot, and they're maybe not guys that you really talk about a whole lot as far as prospect status go.
How much credit do you give to Jose Maega as a manager? Because, he's been in this organization. A lot of the players, they develop and they build and they want to get towards to the majors, and a lot of guys give credit to him. How important is he to this organization?
Oh, yeah, the manager is obviously a huge pillar of what goes on the field. Last year, a really successful season. Obviously, we didn't get to the playoffs, but finishing second place in both halves and one of the best records we've ever put together. So that's not lost on some of the guys that were here last year that are still here, or the guys that have gone on to Double A. But certainly gets a lot of credit as he deserves, and that's kind of just how it goes as a manager, right? You get the credit when things are going well. When you're losing more games than you're winning, you also got to face the music in those kind of situations, right? So I think the reality is somewhere in the middle, where he is a really good manager and, maybe had a bit more to work with last year, especially on the offensive side compared to this year, but he's making it work and he's doing a nice job. Obviously, we remember him in the World Baseball Classic, managing Panama. So he's got that experience at that international level to bring to the table. So definitely a manager that I'd say, we're all prospects at this level, players and coaches, right? So I think that might be a guy that is a prospect for a potential call up, even maybe all the way up to the major leagues one day.
So what's next for the Vancouver Canadians? Like, what do they need to do to improve? Because like right now it's like a four-way tie for like fourth place right now at the moment, right? And we know who's in first place. That's Everett, and they're just so good right now. And what do they need to do to get back into form?
Yeah, it's Eugene actually that's in first place, so you'll see tonight. But yeah, they're well ahead, of course. And like I said earlier, I think Eugene probably will run away with this first half. But I think just getting some mojo back and getting some of those close wins under our belt. We've had a lot of one-run losses. Oddly enough, it's been kind of the same story as the second half last year, where just can't quite get over the hump in some of those one-run games with the losing record. So I think you eke out a couple of those wins, you have a couple of walk-off wins there, and all of a sudden things are rolling, right? And we haven't really had one of those win streaks where you're kind of rolling, where last year we had, I want to say it was 13 straight at one point. We just haven't really had that. So getting the juices rolling and get everyone on the same page and riling off one of those win streaks, I think that's going to be in the cards in the second half if we can do that.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. First media video interview, man. You broke the ice. I mean, Joe Scafani, we had him on video for the first time. Broke the ice, and he's so humble about it. We appreciate it. But where can we find you on social media and everywhere else?
Yeah, at Chris Georges 25 on social media there. Of course, at Van Canadians for all Canadians news and promotions coming up and everything. I'm on the sales side here as well, so we're selling tickets. We're trying to, fill the ballpark as much as we can here, and we've done a really nice job. Our first May sellout in team history, May 17th, wow. last homestand on the Sunday. So we're looking to kind of continue that, and especially with our Friday, Saturday, Sundays, you'll see it almost packed here every night.
Make sure you follow Chris Georges on social media, and we're going to post this video on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe at the Blue Jays Avenue podcast, and make sure you follow the Vancouver Canadians, and they're an exciting team. So signing off from the Blue Jays Avenue podcast in Nat Bailey Stadium. All right, we're live here inside Nat Bailey Stadium. This is our third and final day of our podcast, the Blue Jays Avenue, representing first inaugural experience. It's been awesome. We've covered prospects. We interviewed Nolan Perry. We interviewed Danny Thompson Jr. And now we have the main play-by-play guy, Tyler Zickel. Welcome. I appreciate you doing this. We finally have met up. You've been in our podcast last year, in our third month of our podcast career. Welcome. It's an awesome time. Thanks for the invitation once again.
Yeah, Rocky, my pleasure. And shout out to everybody tuning in, whether it's video or audio. What a great day here at the Nat, huh? Nice to have you up here in the catbird seat.
Yes.
Seats have been playing pretty well. It might be the Rocky and Blue Jays Avenue effect. Not only have they won 3 games this week, but
awesome.
The first place Emeralds, who they're playing, the Giants affiliate, have not even split a series this year. They've won every series until this week, and now got to get a series win today.
So let's talk about the experiences going on right now. When you look at the team itself, like how would you evaluate the team itself? Because we had Chris Georges a couple days ago. He had his own. I want to hear your perspective of what your take on this team is so far.
Yeah, I would say for the most part, the team has been right there. The record doesn't necessarily reflect what the talent is on this team. Lots of individual excellent performers. But if you even take a look at the stats, I've got our game notes for today right here. And one of the stats I like to track is record in one-run games, 5-8 in one-run games, 5-7 in 2-1 games, but in 4+ run games, 7-8. So they're beating up on teams, but it's those close games where if the ball bounces the wrong way late or just one or two things go wrong, they end up coming out on the wrong side of the final result. So nice to be able to build some momentum going into the second half. Of course, there's a first half champion and a second half champion here in the Northwest League. Eugene is going to run away with the first half, but if the Seas can build some momentum, the second half starts on June 19th in Spokane against the Rockies affiliate. So that's when the hope is all things start to pull on the same side of the rope.
Who would you say is the breakout player of the year so far? Because there's so many guys you could mention about. We could talk about Johnny King. We could talk about Nolan Perry. We could talk about Carter Cunningham, and Alexis Perez. But in your mind, who's the breakout player of the year so far?
I think you mentioned all great guys who are deserving of some shine. One guy who's really come on my radar this year is starting pitcher Daniel Guerra. He's been fantastic. He's one of the hardest throwers on this team, but he's also Mr. Consistent. He's logged the most innings on this roster. He also has one of the lowest ERAs in all of the Northwest League. So that's who I would pick on the pitching side. And then on the hitting side, I would actually say Maddox Latta, who's leading off.
Yes.
Maddox has been very good. Signed as a non-drafted free agent out of Cal State Fullerton last year. He's got a great baseball family heritage. His dad down in Southern California owns a baseball training facility for over 30 years now. And so for Maddox to show up here in high A for the first time ever, he's hit 3 professional home runs, all of them coming this season. And he is just a spark plug and plays fantastic defense up the middle.
You know what's the interesting part about it? He's a UDFA who signed with the Blue Jays from
That's right.
Cal Fullerton State.
That's right.
And now he's looked like, and a lot of people we mention about, and you look at this team overall, how would you compare this team compared to the previous years you've covered and called games? And how exciting is this team compared to the past?
You know, we've had some more exciting teams in the past compared to this year, if I'm just being completely honest. Of course, 2023 was a special year. Guys like Adam Macko were on this team.
Right.
Of course, he's now doing so great in the big leagues. Brent LaValle was our manager that season. All sorts of players coming through town and eventually winning the Northwest League Championship. 2024 was great as well. And last year's team won a single season franchise record 75 games, shy of that 2023 team, which of course had the playoffs as well. So last year's team, top to bottom, all those guys who are now in AA, Sean Keyes, Eddie Micheletti Jr.,
Yes.
Cutter Coffey, Adrian Pinto. Really, it's the
Yeah.
New Hampshire Canadians, we like to
Yeah.
call it then
Yeah.
nowadays. We love rooting for our Canadians alumni. Last year's team had a lot of excitement, won 11 consecutive games. Sean Keyes sent the single season home run record with 19. He had a couple of walk-off bombs, which were electric. Jackson Wentworth set the single season franchise record for innings pitched and strikeouts. So since 2021, my first year with the Canadians, I would say 2023 and 2025 have been the 2 most exciting teams. But I'm starting to see this team emerge with an identity. That was the problem early on. It was hard to determine, what is this team going to be? Are they going to beat up on guys? Are they going to win close games? Are they going to get lucky late? How's it going to be? We all know as baseball fans, every year a team has to figure out who they are. And it feels like over the last few weeks, this team really has started to figure that out.
Talk about this fan base here, and it's been electric ever since I've been here. And I've been talking to people, just in fans in general. They said this is like the largest crowds they've had probably in history. And talk a bit about that and what has captivated this fan base to come and watch these games. Is it the players, the excitement? Is it now that the farm is built so well and it gets more buzz compared to past? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, the Canadians have historically led the Northwest League in attendance going back to the short season rookie ball days. Right around 2007, 2008, we had new owners come in, Jake Kerr and Jeff Mooney, who have since sold the team to Diamond Baseball Holdings. But they owned the team for nearly 25 years, nearly 15 years rather. Math's not my strong suit, but they were terrific. So from 2007, when they bought the team, they made a lot of changes. They brought in our former team president, Andy Dunn, to run the show.
Okay.
Andy has since given up the reins, and he's now down back in his home state of Florida, doing something different with the Tigers affiliate down there. And so now our boss is general manager Alan Bailey. But all that to say, this place, Nat Bailey Stadium, which is 75 years old this year, we're celebrating the historic anniversary of this ballpark. It's always held a special place in this city's heart. And I used to work for AA New Hampshire. And even then, when it was a short season club here in Vancouver, guys in AA, years after they'd been Canadians, would still be talking about how awesome the city and the ballpark and the fans are.
Right.
So we have a legacy of drawing well, regardless of what's happening on the field. The team could be bad, and we're still going to lead the league in attendance. Today, we've got another sellout on deck. Nearly 6,000 people will be in the
That's
ballpark
awesome.
this
Yeah.
afternoon. That is what makes this experience and minor league baseball in general special. It doesn't just have to be about what happens between the lines. It's about the overall experience that fans get to have for generations now here at the corner of 30th and Ontario.
It's so funny you brought up the milestone of this franchise. The Blue Jays are on their 50th anniversary. The Vancouver Canadians are on their 75th anniversary. At such time it come in all that process, like how historic is this franchise when you're talking about 75 years as such a milestone?
Yeah, it is a big milestone. And, you know, to be more specific, it's 75 years of this ballpark, which has now hosted 3 different teams, starting with the Vancouver Capellanos, then the Vancouver Mounties, then the AAA Canadians, which started in 1978. The short season Canadians moved up here from Southern Oregon. They used to be a different team. And then the team that was here moved down to Sacramento to become the River Cats. And then starting in 2021, of course, this became the high A affiliate of the Jays. So to be just a small part of this legacy for me personally has been such an incredible experience. And just a few years from now, we'll celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Canadians franchise.
That's awesome.
So this is a historic time
Absolutely.
to be here at the Nat.
So when you look at this team, who do you think's the next guy in line to be promoted to AA?
Well, the guy pitching today, Nolan Perry, who you had a chance to talk to,
Yes.
and the guy who has already made one great start in this series and has made 4 great starts for the Canadians since coming up from Dunedin. I think after talking to Joe Sclafani myself the other day, We'll get him for a few more weeks, but if he continues to do this, entering today's game with a 3-0 record and even more impressively, a 0.43 ERA in his first 4 starts, he might not be a Canadian for long. He might be a future Fisher Cat in the near future. I think Alexi Hernandez on the offensive side is very close, as is Carter Cunningham, who was named the Northwest League Player of the Month for April. He's cooled down a bit in May, but that's also because now he gets circled by all the opposing teams as saying, this is the Canadians' best hitter. So pitchers, you better have your best stuff. And that has shown in this month of May. But Joe has had nothing but good things to say about the work that Carter continues to put in.
Right.
And he's just a great guy. He is somebody who could be a face of the franchise in terms of how he cares about the community and the fans and goes about his business the right way, away from the field as much as on the field. So for me, Alexi Hernandez, Carter Cunningham, Nolan Perry, 3 guys that certainly could make the jump soon.
I'd like to ask this final question to you, and this is probably a nostalgia one, a historic one. Jim Robson, an icon in Vancouver, play-by-play guy. And we saw the patches that's been represented and, the inheritance of what these sports analysts and sports play-by-play guys, including yourself, talk about him, how much of an icon he is to the city of Vancouver and everywhere else.
Jim Robson is the giant. I'm American. We have Mount Rushmore down there in South Dakota. And Jim is all 4 faces on Mount Rushmore for broadcasting in Canada and for hockey broadcasting in general. But he got his start here at the Nat. In fact, he did his final sit-down interview with me and one of our local sports talk show hosts back at the beginning of November, right during the World Series. We were hosting a World Series party. And so we went over to the studio to lay down an interview with Jim, not knowing he would pass away a few months later. We spent over an hour together talking about he was 16 years old. He walked into the office and he spoke to legendary team president Bob Brown and said, hey, I'd love to cover the team. Can I get a credential? And so Bob Brown gave him a credential, and he's on the field interviewing players. And that was the start of a 7-decade career. And as you mentioned, the patches, I've got one right here. The Jim Robson patch, which of course is on every single home white jersey, which the Canadians will wear. And I even have Jim Robson's card, which he gave me when I first moved up here. It says Jim Robson, retired sports broadcaster. He made him himself. That was how true of a pro he was all the way up till his final days. He took me under his wing, and he paid me some very nice compliments along the way in terms of how much he liked my broadcast, kind of an old school style, and it made him really enjoy listening to the games better than ever before. He used to sit right here in this booth, so we literally are standing on the shoulder of a giant here at the top of the Matt Bailey Stadium press box. And so a sorely, sorely missed individual. Of course, you get into your 90s, that's a great run. Oh, yeah. Everybody's got to go sometime. Absolutely. And Jim, to the very end, was with it and active and a fervent Canadians fan. Every Friday home game, he would be behind home plate in his usual seats. That's awesome. We miss Jim dearly, but we carry on his tradition.
So what's next for you? I know you're a play-by-play guy, but if you're covering the team, what's an upcoming schedule for the Vancouver Canadians?
So we'll hit the road after today's game. In fact, we'll travel tomorrow down to southeastern Washington to take on the Angels affiliate, the Tri-City Dust Devils. Then we're back here on June 9th for a 6-game series against the Mariners affiliate from Everett. Then a 2-week road trip. First down to Hillsborough, that's the Diamondbacks club. Then over to Spokane to take on the Rockies team, the Indians. And then we're back here for a 2-week homestand, which starts on June 30th. We'll play here on Canada Day, July 1st. We also are playing on July 4th, America's Independence Day here at the Nat for the first time. Normally we're south of the border on the road, but we'll play 12 games in 13 days. First against these guys, Eugene, then again against Everett. So looking forward to really the height of summer over those 2 weeks at the end of June and start of July.
Well, I appreciate you doing this and giving the time and coverage. I know that you're a very busy man.
My pleasure, Rocky.
Yes. And where can we find you on social media and everywhere else?
Yeah, for sure. Follow the Canadians, CanadiansBaseball.com, across social media at Van Canadians. All of our broadcasts are carried live on Sportsnet 650 here in Greater Vancouver. Though you can access the radio broadcast anywhere, whether it's the MILB app or on sportsnet.ca/650, and Valley Sports Live carries our games for free like they do for all minor league teams. And if you have an MLB TV Plus subscription, you can also see our games as well. So please join us as we love to bring you all the action from the future Blue Jays, and really looking forward to the rest of the season.
Make sure you follow Tyler Zickel, one of the best in the business, one of our representatives in the Jays industry when it comes to play-by-play calling. So signing out from the Blue Jays Avenue podcast, make sure you follow Tyler Zickel on social media.